Rumors had been spreading across the Stable SMP that one of the strongest players on the entire server, Wembu, had died. But after being unable to find a single player who had actually seen his death message, I had a strong feeling that something else was going on. But up until now, all of that had just been a theory. A game theory! When I got word of an anonymous player traveling across the server invisible, I knew it must be him. So I went to investigate. I followed the invisible player for some time, until he finally slipped up, and after he accidentally popped his totem, his identity was revealed. It was Wembu. I had been right. However, before I could confront him, he splashed an invisibility potion and began to fly away. And because this is the Stable SMP, I decided to follow him. However, after a few minutes of flying, he suddenly took off all of his armor and shield and flew directly down into the water, where he disappeared without a trace. Defeated, I returned to my base in Blockade City and continued with my regular duties, until not long later I got word that a player matching Wembu's description was traveling across the server in search of an abandoned civilization rumored to be millions of blocks from spawn. This had to be him, so I grabbed all the gear I'd need, a shulker of spyglasses and a questionably small supply of invisibility, and headed to the very real and totally functional Enderpearl cannon that uses some very complicated and definitely real redstone technology to fire Enderpearls millions of blocks, which would save me a lot of time traveling. However, for plot convenient reasons, nobody knows the exact location of the abandoned civilization, meaning I'd have to travel the rest of the way myself. And after some flying, I came across exactly what I was looking for, a Minecraft empire known as the Nearland Civilization. So I decided to see if they knew which way I should travel to reach my destination. And luckily they promised to tell me the location of the civilization I was looking for in exchange for my friend Theobald the Nerd, who arrived not long after me. Alright, now can you help me out? I'm trying to find the abandoned civilization, although I've heard that nobody knows where it is.
The abandoned one, it's over in that direction. You could've just read the sign, you know.
So I headed in the direction the sign said. However, after traveling for over 300,000 blocks, the civilization was nowhere in sight. And that's when I realized those players that I was talking to had been invisible, meaning they could have been anyone. My enemies, Wembu's allies, or even Wembu himself trying to throw me off the trail. Luckily, there was another civilization not far from where I was, known as the Visible Civilization, home to a group of players known as the Visible Mafia. If any member of the Visible Mafia ever get the invisibility effect, they will be teleported into the void with a definitely functional stasis chamber and banned from the Stable SMP. And while this makes them pretty easy to find, they're the only players I can be sure are not Wembu or his allies in disguise. So I headed straight there to question them about the location of the abandoned civilization. Their leader, Cabbage K, explained that a player had appeared not long ago and threatened to launch an orbital strike cannon at their base if they didn't give them the coordinates of the abandoned civilization. This had to be Wembu, passing through here on the way to the abandoned civilization. This was bad. While it did show me that I was on the right track, it would make convincing them to tell me the information I needed very difficult. Give me one good reason why I shouldn't just kill you. You see, I am the smartest player in all of Minecraft. Alright buddy, that's enough monologue. Here, take this plot convenient compass that we have for no particular reason. It'll lead you to the abandoned civilization. And after a few more days of traveling, I finally arrived at the abandoned civilization, and I was shocked. I realized that the civilization wasn't abandoned at all, and was just called that because the people living there didn't have any friends. The entire civilization was surrounded by an impenetrable, an obsidian wall filled with lava and wardens and junk bands. And while typically this wouldn't be much of an issue for me, earlier in the day a rogue background character had stolen my shulker box full of escape kit, meaning that the only way to get into the civilization was through the front door, which was being guarded by a player in full netherite armor. Fighting this player was out of the question, but luckily, as the self-proclaimed smartest player on the server, I knew exactly what to do. I knew I couldn't beat this player, but I didn't have to, because I had a plan. And now that I've defeated the guard, I could finally look for Wembu. However, I would need to be stealthy to not risk being discovered. And after searching around for a few minutes, I found exactly what I was looking for. It was Wembu, Finally, this was my chance to confront him. However, that's when I realized that Wembu is one of the best players on the entire Stable SMP. And if I tried to fight him alone, I would probably die. So I decided to call an old friend of mine to help, one of the strongest players on the entire Stable SMP, Fire Fragments, who is known as the Mortal Demon due to all the insane stunts he's pulled off, like killing an entire group of players with only his fist, after accidentally placing a sword into a decorated pot, leaving him with nothing left to fight with, other than the axe in his hopper and a second netherite door. Regardless, with his help, this fight would become a lot more possible, and we might even be able to— Wait,